So we're ready. Technically, we're ready. So we'll call this meeting to order. Does anybody have any issues with the minutes from the last meeting?
I move that we accept the minutes as published from the last
Second.
meeting.
It's been moved and second that we approve the minutes. Those in favor?
Aye.
So, good evening. My name is Ralph Lewis. I am the chairperson for the Stayton Planning Commission, and I will be presiding over this hearing. This is the time and place set for the continuation of the public hearing in the matter of land use file 5-03/22 on an application for site plan approval for a 72-unit multifamily development on an unaddressed parcel of land on 3rd Avenue. The property is zoned high-density residential. This hearing commenced on April 25 and was continued until this evening over concerns that notice of the hearing may have been deficient. The staff has confirmed that notice was sent for the April hearing to all property owners required to receive notice under the municipal code. This hearing is now reopened. Oregon land use law requires a statement be made to those in attendance that covers certain matters relative to this case. The statement, with all the information required to be presented under ORS 197.7635, is printed and available on the table at the entry to the hearing room. Also, at the table and at the entry of the hearing room is the agenda for this evening's meeting, the Planning Commission's rules of procedure for land use public hearings, and a brochure written to facilitate your participation in the public hearing. You are encouraged to obtain and read a copy of these documents. At this time, I would ask the audience if there are any additional objections to the notice that was sent in this hearing. I hear none. To the jurisdiction of this body to hear and consider this case. I hear none. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or bias by any members of this body?
Yep, I live in the parsonage, which is across the street from the area. Is that good enough?
Good enough for me. I think it identifies. Okay. Whereas the April hearing provided an opportunity for public testimony, it has been determined that there was no defect in the notice for that hearing. There has been an additional 5-week opportunity to submit written testimony, and the hearing had proceeded to the point of providing the applicant an opportunity for summary. We will not be accepting additional testimony at this hearing tonight. We'll now resume the hearing with a staff introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the opening statement said, this hearing commenced last month, was continued because there were audience members who objected to closing the hearing because they did not receive written notice of the hearing. We went back and checked, and both of those individuals' property is outside of the 300-foot radius around the subject property, which is why they did not receive the notice. Your staff report shows the properties that did receive notice. We confirmed by checking the mailing list that was used that notice was sent to all of those properties. In your packet was a email that was received from an individual after the April hearing and prior to the date the packet was compiled. I have distributed to you some correspondence that has taken place since last Friday. There's a chain of emails between Tim Lawler from Greenlight Development, myself, and Lance Ludwig, the Public Works Director, and Jay Alley, the Assistant or Deputy Fire Chief, Second in Command, whatever his title may be, at Stayton Fire District. Also, in there is a graphic that Tim had sent to Jay and Lance and myself, demonstrating the widths of the travel aisles and the turning radii in the parking area. There is a letter that is dated May 25th, but I received on the 27th from the Public Works Director regarding the issue of whether a second entrance into the development is required. And there is an email I received late morning this morning from Alan Sorum, who is legal counsel for the applicant, explaining why the Planning Commission should not impose a requirement for a second access way. I have also distributed to you this evening a further revised draft order. Highlighted in yellow are the changes from the draft order that was included in your packet that were included to address this correspondence that we have received, because we have an obligation to acknowledge that written testimony and explain how we have addressed it. So that's in there, and again, those changes are highlighted in yellow. I have, I guess we distributed all the copies we had, right? I just wanted to make sure you understood what you've got in front of you that was placed there tonight. And the reason that staff is recommending that you not take additional oral testimony tonight is because we went through all of the oral testimony. We did provide adequate written notice to everybody who needed it. Signs have been posted. It's been on the city's website since early April. There is no reason to necessarily to take additional written testimony oral testimony when people have had 5 weeks since your last hearing to submit written comments. And we've received only the email from Mr. Aboud and the letter from the Public Works Director. So with that, I would recommend that you turn it over to the applicant for their summary of the application. And then I will be back with my summary and a refresher review of the draft order.
Thank you. So let's hear from the applicant.
No, push the button.
Last time was quite the issue. Good evening, committee. I'm Tim Lawler, representing Greenlight Development and Home First Development. I want to just refresh everyone kind of about this project and where we left off last month. So Greenlight Development and Home First Development, we're affordable home builders. We've built over 3,000 new homes in Oregon. Our primary mission over the past few years has been to focus on just really great smaller communities in Oregon. Currently, we have 500 units in the process of development within communities like Molalla, Ontario, Mill City, Tillamook, Burns, Estacada, and obviously here in Stayton. You know, a lot of these projects, we partner with great organizations, veterans organizations, senior citizens, foster families, and even some refugee groups fleeing religious persecution. This project in Stayton is going to be 72 units of affordable homes, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom style apartments meant for families who are earning at or below 60% of the area median income of Marion County. So they will have to provide proof of income to rent these apartments. They will have to go through application process to rent these apartments, just as any normal apartment. Greenlight and Home First Development are going to be long-term owners of this project. We will have on-site management and we will dedicate resources to building a strong, safe community. Some of these additional resources will be community health information, parenting and finance support, rent services, and just general education to help residents and lower income earners be aware of kind of opportunities in the community. Just for kind of the record, just for information, Marion County has a housing need. We're all aware of that throughout the state of Oregon, especially Marion County. Stayton has an elevated poverty rate compared to the state average. This all comes from the Oregon Housing Community Services statewide housing plan, which actually states that Marion County needs around 12,000 affordable housing units. So, for example, someone who would want to live here at Stayton Apartments could be someone who applied for the City of Stayton Municipal Court Clerk, would earn $36,000, could qualify to live here. A park ranger at Silver Falls could live here. A Wilco cashier, they could all qualify to live here. A family of 4 would have to have an income of around $47,000 to qualify. So again, working families, lower income working families. I also want to address a couple of the issues that were raised by Dan with some of the letters we've got since our last meeting. The fire access issue, we feel that you all have it in your packet. We appreciate the concern that was raised. We obviously, fire life safety is one of our top priorities. We're going to own this project. We care about our tenants. So we followed all the codes of Oregon Fire, sufficient turnaround spaces, WIS, everything. The buildings will be fully sprinklered. So again, we've reached out to Jay Alley to confirm that everything that we have in our site plan meets codes and meets all requirements that the state and the city has agreed to. We actually will also have 2 fire hydrants on site. And also, just one thing to note, previous projects, I think it was in the November meeting, had a 99 unit with 1 access. So, the code states for anything under 100 units can have 1 access. So again, our project we feel is fully safe with sprinklers, access, hydrants. We're very concerned. The other comment we should actually discuss real quick as well is our, in your packet for this motion is Building A is rotating. We talked about this last time, so I apologize for the reiteration of everything. Building A, per your code, should be facing, is recommended to be facing Third Avenue, the entrances, but due to the topography, the first level of Building A would be kind of against the wall and no one would be able to see that from Third Avenue. So we rotated the building to the north, kind of what we feel is hitting the requirement of the design intention, because by having to the north, you can actually see it from the community park next door. You can see it from Third Avenue easier. It's not blocked by that topography. Thank you. We've had amazing support from the city of Stayton, Santiam Hospital, Mono Department of Human Services. So we appreciate all the support. And again, we really want to state that the reason we're here again this evening is because there was concern that the proper methods and rules and regulations weren't met last time with the notifications. But that's been determined that everything was met and done properly. So we want to, move forward with this meeting as we're doing so. So we appreciate your understanding on that. And I urge you all to approve our current site plan and concur that Building A is meeting the intent of the design standard. And we really look forward to building homes for families with kids and being a part of this community here in Stayton. So thank you.
Thank you. So now we're at staff summary.
Good, thank you. So I want to take a moment to also, I want to take a moment to address the highlighted portions of the revised draft order. Oh, it is. Do you not hearing? I'll put it in my mouth. Is that better? I want to take a moment to touch on the highlighted paragraphs in the revised draft order that you have before you tonight. At the bottom of page 2 is just noting that following the April public hearing, we did receive those 2 pieces of written comment that I had mentioned in my introduction. And then there is no change until page, I got to find it, page 6, which is the findings regarding the standard in the code that requires provisions been made for safe and efficient internal traffic circulation and safe access to the property from public streets and roads. And in there, 2 new paragraphs have been added. One is Mr. Aboud, referring to Mr. Aboud's comments that there should be no on-street parking on North 3rd Ave, and noting that neither the traffic impact analysis that was submitted nor the city's transportation planning engineer had made any reference to that. North 3rd Ave is a fully improved street. It appears to meet the design standards for a local residential street. Secondly, is the discussion from the Public Works Director regarding the secondary vehicular access. The planning, while it was not part of the record, it was not part of what was provided to you before for the April hearing, because there was some email correspondence back in February between the applicant and the Stayton Fire District asking, and that was all before the application was submitted, asking whether a second entrance was required, and the Stayton Fire District replied, no, it was not. Then I do note also that section 1726.020(2)B permits only one driveway from a multifamily development that has less than 1,000 trips per day. With 72 units, this development would be generating probably in the order of 600 to 700 trips per day. And finally, though not directly controlling on this application, section 1724.046H, which is in the chapter on land divisions, and this is not a land division, does require multifamily residential projects with more than 100 units to have no less than 2 means of access. And as I read this aloud, I see a couple of typos as I was banging this out at 4:45 this afternoon. So that's what's noted here, and also provides you some of the history of the discussion on the second access. With that, I would turn your and the audience's attention to the conditions of approval that staff has recommended. There are 7 of them, one of which has 5 different parts, so maybe that's 11 conditions of approval. But the applicant needs, in addition to, just as a reminder, in addition to the application for site plan review that has been the bulk of the discussion, there is a concurrent application to modify the 1999 or subdivision plan for Santiam Station to vacate a public utility easement. So the first recommended condition of approval is that the applicant submit to the planning department a draft replat of Lot 7 for Santiam Station. And you may recall that last month at the public hearing, I said that that after that subdivision was platted, the owner of Lot 7, the current owner of Lot 7, has deeded out various little portions of it, but there was never a replat. So to finally get all of that fixed, the condition of approval is file a replat that vacates the public utility easement, but also shows the current location of North Third Avenue right-of-way and reflects the various pieces that have been taken out of this lot without the benefit of a replat recorded at the registry. Obtain a site development permit from the Public Works Director. Prior to applying for that site development permit, to submit a revised site plan to the Planning Department to reduce the driveway width to a maximum of 24 feet, which is what our Public Works design standards call for, or to receive a design exception from the Public Works design standards from the Public Works Director. Prior to the submittal of an application, submit a revised landscape plan to include notes regarding the trimming of street trees to assure they do not impede sight distance or pedestrian or vehicular traffic. Prior to submittal of the application for a site development plan, to submit an irrigation plan, which was not submitted with this application. And then with the application for site development plan, there's a list of 5 different sets of engineering plans that need to be submitted: street and improvement plans, water system plans, sanitary sewer plans, a final stormwater analysis, and an erosion and sedimentation control plan. And finally, the 7th condition of approval that's recommended is that with the submission of an application for building permits, provide adequate detail to indicate that the architectural standards of 1720 190.3C are met, or, and this is the issue that Mr. Lawler reminded you of on Building A, obtain a variance through a separate land use proceeding. And you will notice that later on our agenda this evening is their application for a variance should you not determine that their existing layout meets the intent of the code as they attempted to. So that's a rather long summary, but you've got before you in the staff report a set of options to act on this application with motions for each one. Staff continues to recommend that you approve the application and adopt the most recently revised draft order that you have in front of you as presented.
All right, thank you. So we'll close the hearing for that, and we'll go to deliberation. So what do you all think? Silence?
So I guess the one thing I would say is I look at the City of Stayton zoning map, which I always carry with me when I come here to look at. There's virtually, if you look around the mouse, there's very few high-density housing places left in the city at this time that are zoned appropriately to that. This is one of them. And I believe the applicant meets the definition of high-density housing and what he's putting on there, and the property is properly zoned for that at this time. So I don't see any problems with it.
Any issues?
I don't have any issues. I think it's needed, and I think the design looks nice. I think they can do a good job of what they have, and will benefit the city.
Okay.
Very well done. We do need the apartments.
All right. Speaking of high density, I think this piece of property is probably the only one that's actually developable. So I think this is a good use of it. So Chair would recognize a motion.
Okay, I move the State and Planning Commission approve the application of Greenlight Home First LLC, land use file number 503/22, and adopt the May 31st revised draft order presented by staff.
Is there a second? Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve this. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So do we still have to do the variance?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Variance, you do need to read the closing statement for this year.
Is that somewhere?
It is at the tail end of your open statement.
Are we doing that next?
No, next on the agenda is public hearing on something plan.
Okay, it's not in there. The commission's decisions may be appealed to the city council within 14 days of the mailing of the notice of decision in accordance with section 17.12.110 of the Stayton Municipal Code. Make sure I don't put that in the junk pile this time. Okay, so once again, good evening. My name is Ralph Lewis. I am the chairperson for the Stayton Planning Commission, and I will be presiding over this hearing. This is the time and place set for the public hearing in the matter of land use file 6-04/22, an application for a comprehensive plan map amendment and a zone map amendment to change the property at 381 East Marion Street from a comprehensive planned map designation of downtown to residential, and a zone change from downtown residential mixed use to medium density residential. This hearing is now open. Oregon land use law requires a statement be made to those in attendance that covers certain matters relative to this case. That statement, with all the information required to be presented under ORS 197.7635, is printed and available at the back table. If you have not received one of these forms, you should go and get one and review it prior to presenting your testimony. If anyone has any questions regarding anything on the statement or objects to it not being read aloud, please raise those questions when it comes to your turn to speak during the hearing. Also, at the back table is an agenda for this hearing, this evening's meeting, which lays out the order in which people will be called on to speak during the public hearing. The Planning Commission's rules of procedure for land use public hearings and a brochure written to facilitate your participation in the public hearing. You are encouraged to obtain and read a copy of these documents as well. At this time, I would ask the audience if there are any objections to the notice that was sent in this hearing. I hear none. To the jurisdiction of this body to hear and consider this case. I hear none. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or bias by any members of this body?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I drove by the property yesterday. It looks very, very nice. The only thing that I'm concerned with is I didn't see any public notice having been posted on the property relative to this hearing. And I did bring the section, you may have a certification, the planning director may have a certification that has been done.
I think we failed to get the sign out to the applicant.
Okay.
Shall I read the pertinent section of the code, or should we just postpone the hearing until that can be done?
That's up to the
thank you.
commission.
If he reads it, is that enough?
Well, the section he's going to read is what requires the sign
I
to be
see,
posted
okay.
10 days in
I-
advance.
I think we have to allow it, or we're going to have issue later. Right? We'll have to postpone it, or we're going to have issue
You-
later.
You risk having issues later if anyone objects.
Mhm.
So, do we just stop, or?
If you do not want to proceed with the hearing, then, yep, we stop now, we get the notices out, we get the sign out to the property, and we proceed at the June meeting.
I offer
Yeah.
a motion that we continue, that we
Well,
postpone or
So
continue.
the question I have then is, can we,
Just a minute.
I'm sorry.
Richard's up.
okay.
I offer a motion that we delay the hearing to allow the applicant to comply with this section of the code.
Okay. But it's not really the applicant, I think it's the planning department.
The planning department provides
Yep.
the sign for the applicant.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yep.
All right.
So your question is, could we,
Go ahead, Larry.
So I guess my question would be, could we have the hearing and postpone decision until next time so that we hear what's here to be presented tonight and then hold it till next time? And if there's no further input from anybody in the community, we make a decision at the next hearing.
That is certainly a possibility. I mean, that's what you did.
with this?
With this last one.
When there was objection raised to the possibility of lack of notice.
That would, since the applicant looks like they're all queued up to give us a nice presentation.
So what do you think, Richard?
Well,
You okay with
I'm
moving
willing
on?
to go with whatever my fellow commissioners,
Since he made a motion, do we need to
Well, we-
not get a second on it, or
We
what do
didn't get a second on it,
Okay.
so. So I think we should just kind of go ahead with this and then stop just before we get to,
so the motion dies without a second.
right. So the motion died without a second. Yes, Richard, I'm sorry. So, okay, so then we'll go to close the hearing and we'll just stop and then do it, okay? So, let's hear from the staff then.
So as was stated in the opening statement, you've got a pair of applications before you, one for a comprehensive plan amendment from designation of downtown to designation of residential. And concurrent with that is a zone map amendment to change the zoning from downtown residential mixed use to medium density residential. With that, I will turn it over to the applicant for her presentation, and then I'll be back with the staff report.
All right, thank you. Applicant,
Hi, my name's Julie Boxler. I live in Stayton here. And I purchased this house on Marion Street about 3 years ago and did a remodel on it. It is a 1908 bungalow built by Clarence and Louise Beaucamp, who were the original owners of Stayton Pharmacy, which then became the Beaucamp Pharmacy and now again is the Stayton Pharmacy. I tried to present last month in April, something about this house because I have had it for sale since January 31st. And as we have gone through looking at it as commercial, we don't get any bites. As we have gone through looking at it as a live-work community or live-work house, we have not been able to get the planning department to agree to any of the work side Planning Department has requested that they have pedestrian foot traffic going in and out of the house instead of just like someone that is making Etsy products or products for the farmer's market or any other kind of manufacturing that may not have pedestrian foot traffic. And so and then another one that we got an offer on was for a business office, a trucking business office. The guy's trucking business was in Newport, Oregon. He wanted to open up a satellite office here and live in the house. And while the deal fell through for other reasons, ultimately Dan rejected the business office being part of a live-work unit. So I requested, instead of filing where I protest or whatever, I didn't want to protest. I just wanted Dan to come to the Planning Commission and ask you guys to look, what is a live-work community? I even wrote up like a little worksheet so you guys could look at it. And then that was it was last month, and you guys had a very long meeting last month. So it was put off, and you just went back and asked the planner, who had been denying all my live-work applicants, to just go figure it out and bring it back to you, and I see that it's not on the agenda again tonight. So currently, I feel failed by the staff, one for the live work, and then now for my zoning change not being given. And then by the Planning Commission, because you looked at a complaint of a citizen and you put it back to the person that they were complaining about to make the decision. So I will sit for another 30 days and hopefully get something out of the Planning Commission that will allow this property to be residential and be allowed to be sold.
Thank you.
I was going to show you the zoning changes, but I'm sure you have them in the packet, so I won't, no sense in continuing it, in my opinion.
Okay. We're back to staff report.
So you've got all of the application materials in front of you. The recommendation from staff is to approve both applications for the comprehensive plan amendment. Oh, actually, one other thing. Friday, in addition to all of the correspondence on the previous application, it's not public, that's my mic. We received this correspondence. We received that correspondence from the Fair Housing Council of Oregon and housing land advocates who were expressing concern over the lack of analysis about statewide planning goal 10, which addresses housing needs in the draft order. So I just saw that this morning, since I was out of the office Thursday and Friday. I have put together a revised draft order, again, on page 3, highlighted is the revisions in response to that communication. Just to put it on the record, the housing needs projection in our comprehensive plan indicates that we need 1,281 additional housing units during the planning period. The buildable lands inventory indicated there were 244 acres of vacant and redevelopable land zoned residential in the city and 947 acres of land in the urban growth boundary and outside of the city limits designated for residential, for a total of about 1,200 acres of residential land supply. The comprehensive plan indicated that approximately 460 acres of land will be needed to accommodate the expected housing growth during the planning period, providing a surplus of over 700 acres of land. And this proposal will increase the amount of land zoned or designated residential by 0.2 acres. The original draft just noted that we were going to increase the supply of residential land. They thought that analysis was inadequate. So with that, barring the unforeseen failure to get the sign up, the staff's recommendation would be to approve both these applications and forward this to you actually aren't approving it, you are providing a recommendation of approval to the city council, who will hold their own public hearing and make the final decision.
Right, thank you. So, questions from the commission? You guys have any questions? Doesn't look like it. Are there any proponents who wish to present tonight?
I will note that in your packet is a letter of support from one of the neighboring property owners, I assume neighboring resident.
Are there any opponents? Governmental agencies? General testimony? Go ahead. We need your name and address, please.
My name is Aaron Frichtel, reside in Sublimity, Oregon, have a building downtown.
Aaron?
Yes.
We need your mailing address, because.
12326 Golf Lane, Southeast, Sublimity, 97385. Frichtl. In the testimony of this organization that was asking for additional housing, I'm concerned that they're not taking into account the actual place that is being talked about. So I didn't quite understand why they were raising an objection to that. It's a historic building. It's been nicely renovated, and as you've seen by driving by it or looking at the picture, it looks beautiful. I don't, as an owner downtown, I think that it's a wise thing to enable the property owner to sell it to an individual or organization that would like to have a business and also reside in the building. I think it makes sense. I think that our downtown core is missing some additional places for business, and I think that I would voice my my agreement that it should be changed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from the public? Are there any questions from the commission? Does the applicant have a summary? No. And staff summary?
I guess I'll just say you've got now a revised draft order in front of you that addresses the concerns raised by the Fair Housing Council. To respond to Aaron's comment, I don't think that they were expressing objection to approval of the applications as much as they were concerned that there was not adequate analysis as required under statewide planning goal 10 to support the decision. And hopefully what got added this afternoon will address their concerns. We'll find out, since this just got written a couple of hours ago. I guess the commission needs to decide whether you want to continue the public hearing because of my failure to get the sign out to the applicant or make a decision this evening.
So what do you guys think?
You know, I've only been here, this is my fourth meeting, so I got to think outside the box a little bit.
We love outside the box.
Yeah, thank you. So if this is a 10-day notice that goes out in front of that property for any input or objections to it being there, how long do we have to wait after that? Has this commission ever made an approval outside of a meeting in a formal approval process through email voting process when we're holding a property owner in abeyance based on the sign? Could we do it in a quicker format?
We could just move ahead with it right now. I
That-
think that's
that-
the only time.
Right. To answer your question, Larry, not in the time that I've been here. I'd be surprised if before then, because, you know, that was even before telephones had been invented. No, because, you know, the purpose of that notice is to make sure the general public that passes by knows there's going to be a public hearing and therefore an opportunity to participate. So I would be, if you are concerned about the lack of a sign, my recommendation would be to continue the hearing until the June meeting, not try to finagle around it. If you're not concerned about the lack of a sign, then make a decision this evening.
But again, this goes to the city council for a real
Right.
final decision, so they're only looking for our recommendations.
And so that's what I was thinking. If it's got to go to city council and we go ahead and approve it at our commission level, and
Exactly. In the meantime, we'll get the sign up.
the sign goes out, it's till the city council meets
Right.
for approval, and if that's within that time window, then should we be okay?
And because of the opportunity for a second public hearing, it would be difficult for someone
Yep. Right.
allege that they failed to have, that the lack of a sign before this public hearing prevented them from having the opportunity to participate in the process because there will be a second public hearing.
So Richard,
I can't discount the public's right to know. And I'm also concerned about following what our code says. Here's what it says. The applicant shall be required to post the property 10 days prior to the hearing date with a sign or placard provided by the city. The applicant shall file written certification or affidavit of such posting with the city staff prior to the hearing date. Posting shall be placed as near to a public street as possible and shall be done in such a manner that the notice sign is easily visible from a public street. Now, I have been to council meetings where the public has come in, particularly one on Santa Ana Street, and they had no idea that this person wanted to build some duplexes near their property. And at that time, there were little notices posted on the building. And as a consequence of that public outcry, I think the council, with Dan's input, put this into the code. And I think the public has a right to have this opportunity. That's my point of view.
okay? So what do y'all think? On the one hand, I agree with Larry that this is going to go to city council. Public will get an opportunity to make themselves known. My guess is if the guy across the street knows this is going on, anybody any further away within the 300 feet already knows as well. But I also agree that there is, we got a rule, and we're supposed to be a rule-following body, so.
What do you think, Dixie? Put you on the spot.
Conundrum. Well, if the city's going to put a notice up anyway, then people get a chance to talk. And we're not final say in anything
Right.
for that.
In this particular case, yes.
So I think we should just prove it, let the city, the city council put up their sign.
Okay, how long
Go ahead.
between now and when, if we were to approve, how long between now and city council meets and would be approving this?
So leaving 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
This will go to the city council meeting of the third Monday in June.
Okay.
I'd have to look at a calendar and see what
So
that
that's enough
date
time for it?
is. 20th, perhaps. So essentially 3 weeks from last night.
So should I just take the bull by the horns and do something?
Yep. You should.
Okay.
Okay, I think I've made my point here, and I don't want the applicant to have to, I think I've made my point, I don't want the applicant to have to wait. There is some merit to the fact that, hopefully, the notice will be posted before the city council has their hearing.
My guess is the applicant will be in Dan's office tomorrow to get the sign. That's my thinking.
So I move the Stayton Planning Commission recommend approval of the application of Cordboard Box LLC, land use file number 6-04/22, and adopt the draft order presented by staff.
Revised draft order.
Right. Is there a second?
Second it?
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve this filing. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Let me read the other line of my thing here. The commission's decision will be forwarded to the Stayton City Council, who will schedule their own public hearing prior to the rendering a decision on this applications, because this was for two things. Thank you. Excuse me. Good evening. My name is Ralph Lewis. I am the chairperson for the Stayton Planning Commission and will be presiding over this hearing. This is the time and place set for the public hearing in matter of land use file 8-05/22, an application for a variance to the roof pitch requirements for a building in the downtown, what? No, this is,
Wrong one.
well, that's the one that says 3.
Oh, my apologies.
Okay. So anyway, land use file 9-05-22, an application for a variance to the site design and architectural requirements for a multifamily building. The property is zoned high-density residential. This hearing is now open. Oregon land use law requires a statement be made to those in attendance that covers certain matters relative to this case. The statement with all the information required to be presented under ORS 197.7635 is printed and available on the table by the front, the door back there. If you have not received one of these forms, you should go and get one and review it prior to presenting your testimony. If anyone has any questions regarding anything in the statement or objects to it not being read out loud, please please raise those questions when it comes to your turn to speak during the hearing. Also, at the table by the door is the agenda for this evening's meeting, which lays out the order in which people will be called to speak during the public hearing. The Planning Commission's rules of procedure for land use public hearings and a brochure written to facilitate your participation in the public hearing. You are encouraged to obtain and read a copy of these documents as well. So at this time, I would ask the audience if there are any objections to the notice that was sent in this hearing. I hear none. To the jurisdiction of this body to hear and consider this case. I hear none. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or bias by any members of this body?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I drove by this property yesterday, and again, there was no public notice of this hearing. I was really interested in, I got lost in all the, whether it's a building or an accessory unit, but anyhow, I drove by there and I didn't see this sign.
Signs have been posted on this property.
Pardon me?
Signs have been posted on this property.
Has it?
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank
I
you.
think, isn't there one along?
There's
Cascade
one
Highway?
on Third Ave and one on Cascade Highway.
I didn't see it.
Well, last time I went by, they were there. And they're not back in my office, so if they're not there, then they're not gonna get down to Marion Street, because then we're out of signs.
Okay. So when it is your turn to speak, please state your name and address for the record. As a participant in the hearing, the sitting is required to notify you of the final results of the process. We're now ready for staff introduction.
So, earlier this evening, you approved an application for site plan review of development of the apartment complex on this property, noting that one of the site design / architectural detail requirements of the code was not met, and as a condition of approval, you required that the applicant either revise their site plan to meet that section or to submit this application that you will be hearing now for a variance to that standard. So I will leave the introduction at that and then be back with my staff report following the applicant's presentation.
Okay. Let's hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name's Steve Kay with Cascadia Planning. I'm representing the applicant. My address is P.O. Box 1920, Silverton, Oregon 97381. In the staff report, you can see that this variance application is just focused on Building A. You're pretty familiar with the site. You've been viewing it for two public hearings now. The applicant's request will allow the building to be located 27 feet from the right-of-way when 20 feet is the standard. As discussed at last month's meeting, the grade difference between North 3rd Avenue and the first floor of Building A prevents a direct view of the building entrance or the first floor of the building from that right-of-way. Even if the building were turned sideways or moved closer, it's not going to make a difference because of that grade difference. As such, there's unique circumstances that are associated with this property. There's topographic challenges, and we're limited to access on that north side of the property, the northwest corner. So it prevents the orientation of the building towards the right-of-way because we need to come in at that location. And the grades prevent the building from being located closer to the street. The site plan that was submitted with the variance requests demonstrates that pedestrians and vehicles have the opportunity to easily navigate to the front of the building by coming in the access drive and from the sidewalk ramp that leads down from Third Avenue. So based on that fact, the proposed variance meets the intent of the code standard, which is to easily navigate to the building entrance. You will be able to do that with the proposed improvements. We feel that the staff report that's been presented with your packet and is going to be reviewed tonight shows how this variance request meets the approval criteria. I'll be on hand, as well as the applicant, to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So staff report.
So I think in this case, the consideration of the planning commission is, and it's really, this case and any other variance request is this, are there circumstances on this property that are unique, not replicated, probably not envisioned when the code provisions were written? And secondly, is the requested variance the minimum variance that is practical in order to allow the property to be developed? In this case, well, as Larry noted in the previous public hearing, this is one of two vacant parcels in the city limits zoned high-density residential. The other is the property on Golf Club Road, for which you, back in, I think it was November, approved development on, but hasn't started yet. And this one that earlier this evening you approved development on. And once those two properties are developed, there will be no vacant land left in the city that's zoned high density. But again, when you look at the properties that are zoned high density, this one, I believe, does have a unique set of circumstances in that it's got those elevation, the differences on it. And meeting the requirements of the code would be very difficult to do without rearranging the entire development. Secondly, is it the minimum required available to alleviate the difficulty? We're talking about 27 feet instead of 20. And as the applicant said, again, due to those slopes, they'd have to be digging into the hillside, building retaining walls, stabilizing the soil in order to meet the standard. So with that, the recommendation from staff is to approve the variance, and you've got a draft order to do so, and at the back of the staff report is the usual options and motions for you.
All right, thank you. So questions from the commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
my apologies, I have peace and cry here. My apologies to the applicant, to Mr. Fleischman, to my fellow commissioners. I was looking at the wrong hearing when I made that comment about the posting. So I'm sorry that I did that. Thank you.
All right. So noted, Richard. Any other questions? I guess that wasn't really a question, was it? No other questions? Okay. Are there any proponents' testimony? Opponents' testimony? Governmental agencies? General testimony? Are there any questions from the public? And we're back to questions from the commission. We have any questions that we didn't have before? Okay. So let's go with applicant summary. Does the applicant want to make a summary, or just we'll kind of sit on it and go for it? Okay. How about staff summary?
I don't have anything else to add. You've got a recommended order and a set of options and motions in front of you.
All right, so we'll close the hearing, and I would say that the property on Golf Club Road, we made that high density. We, this group, made that high density. It wasn't high density before. This was the only one for years. So what do you guys think otherwise?
I think they're making it better.
All right, so do we have a motion?
Okay, I move the Stayton Planning Commission approve the application for a variance of Greenlight Home First LLC, land use file number 805/22, and adopt the draft order presented by staff.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The commission's decision may be appealed to the Stayton City Council within 14 days of the mailing of this notice of decision in accordance with section 17.12.110 of the Stayton Municipal Code.
Thank you.
Go forth and prosper. All right. Let's see if I can, we'll do number 3 now. Good evening. My name is still Ralph Lewis, and I am the chairperson for the Stayton Planning Commission, and I will be presiding over this hearing. This is the time and place set for the public hearing in the matter of land use file 8-05/22, an application for a variance to the roof pitch requirements for the building in the downtown, for a building in the downtown zone. The property is zoned downtown commercial mixed use. This hearing is now open. Oregon land use law requires a statement be made to those in attendance that covers certain matters relative to this case. That statement, with all the information required to be presented under ORS 197.7635, is presented, printed, and available at the back table. If you have not yet received one of these forms, you should go and get one and review it prior to presenting your testimony. If anyone has any questions regarding anything on the statement or objects to it not being read out loud, please raise those questions when it comes to your turn to speak during the hearing. Also on the table is the agenda for this evening's meeting, which lays out the order in which people will be called on to speak during the public hearing. The Planning Commission's rules of procedure for land use public hearings, and a brochure written to facilitate your participation in the public hearing. You are encouraged to obtain and read a copy of these documents as well. At this time, I would ask the audience if there are any objections to the notice that was sent in this hearing. I hear none. To the jurisdiction of this body to consider this case. I hear none. Are there any declarations of interest, conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or bias by any members of this body?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I drove by this property yesterday, and I noticed that there was no public notice posted on the property.
I know, I failed to get the signs out for these 2 new public hearings. So,
I say one thing, there is an option on this one that probably wouldn't require a sign.
that's correct. So I would, because the applicant's written materials suggests an argument that a variance is not necessary, I would suggest that you commence the public hearing and then, as you have done before, and then decide whether you want to proceed or not. Because if you rule that a variance is not necessary, then we don't need to proceed with a public hearing at all.
So you're all okay with that?
Yep.
All right. So then I guess with that, we're ready for the staff introduction.
So as means of introduction, this is an application for a variance to the roof pitch requirements that apply to new buildings in the downtown area. The property in question is a separate tax parcel at the corner of North Third Ave and East Water Street that for decades has served as the parking lot for the Napa Auto Parts store, which is on an adjacent parcel to its north. So I'll leave it at that, turn it over to the applicant, and then I'll be back with my staff report.
Okay, applicant.
Oh,
Whoa, technology, good deal.
Hi, my name is Julie Boxler, president and owner of the Cardboard Box LLC. I live in Stayton at 1660 Mount Jefferson Drive, 97383. I am requesting a minor modification from Dan for a food truck lot and an event center going a food truck lot going from one rotating food truck to 4 permanent food trucks, and then the change of use inside the building from M, which is mercantile or something, to A, assembly to create an event space with restrooms and office and storage. I think part of the argument here is I feel like the lane 2 shed that is going on the vacant paved lot is an accessory structure versus a primary building structure. The Napa building and its parking lot are 2 separate tax lots, as Dan stated, but this led the planning department to determine 52 days after the pre-app meeting that a covered area would be an individual primary structure on the paved lot and therefore be required to have a variance of the roof line that was proposed at the pre-app meeting. There are several reasons that the covered area should be considered an accessory dwelling and not a primary structure, in my opinion. First, the covered area is under 1,000 square feet. It has 8 posts and a roof. It does not have a foundation, walls, or windows. And while the covered area is not supported by the current building, it will be attached with flashing at 16 feet high to keep the rain water out of the covered area. I don't think I'm very good at doing this and speaking. So let's see. My first slide is the proposed area, and that's the yep. And that's the vacant lot down at the bottom of the red square, and then the Napa building in its entirety of 10,000 square feet in the upper part. I have moved Napa out of the lower 25 feet, the southern 25 feet of the building, and a little bit farther up, 50 feet up on the west side of the building. So there's about 3,300 square feet to go into the event center with the 5,000 square foot parking lot. So far to date, we are working on removing, well, we have removed all the asbestos flooring, the asbestos boiler, all the lead paint. The oil tank has been discovered and is being the concrete chopped up so they can get inside there and remove it or decommission it. They decommissioned the hydraulic lift, and we still have to clean and remove the old grease traps that were in the Napa building. And the reason I put this on here was just so that you know my intent when I work on anything in the city, like the Marion Street building or the Third and Hollister houses or the Beaucamp building at 395 North 3rd Avenue, is not to lose money, but not to make, I don't necessarily go out to make money. I really like to improve our downtown core. I'm part of Revitalize Downtown Stayton, and I just feel an obligation into improving our historic downtown. I love the history. I got the Beaucamp building on the National Registry, and it's just something in my blood. And my husband, as long as I don't lose money, he's okay. No laughing, Aaron. You think I just have to tap?
You should, see,
So this picture was just to show you the eastern elevation and the southern elevation of the proposed parcel. The nest is going to be an event center with a teen tot room that will be available for families all during the days and evenings. A big room, a storage, restrooms, and a mezzanine that will be connected to the food truck pod with 4 food trucks and a covered area and outdoor seating. And this is once again stating that while the covered area isn't supported by the current building, it will be attached at the roof line with flashing. Also, it's under 1,000 square feet. It has 8 posts and a roof. This is the southern elevation that actually goes directly out to the paved lot. Currently, the paved lot is required to have access to 5 doors, 4 garage doors and 1 man door. And the future plan also calls that people would enter into the event center from 2 garage doors that would be, all glass and be able to be opened, and 2 man doors in the new storefront windows on the east, or the east, southeast side and southwest side. And this is just to help you realize that maybe this really is an accessory building, because without having the paved lot attached to the event center, you would really not be able to get into it. This next slide shows an overhead view of the lot with the 4 food trucks at the bottom, the covered area on the right-hand side, trash enclosure on the left-hand side, and then the interior of the building where the teen tot room is over on the right hand, the event big space is in the middle, 2 bathrooms, a men's and a women's, each with 2 stalls, and then a storage area in the upper left. The gas for the covered area heaters will come from the roof of the Napa building and the meter on the west side of the Napa building. The electrical panel for the food truck lot will be inside the Napa building. The water for the food trucks will come from the south faucet of the Napa building. The restrooms required for the food truck lot will be inside the southern part of the Napa building. Marion County requires the number of restrooms to be the 4 stalls based on the occupancy numbers of the paved lot and the event center space. They don't allow me to say one is separate from the other because both rely on each other. If you're in the food truck lot, you might go into the event center, and if you're in the event center, you might go out to the food truck lot. The city has not asked for bathrooms to be in the primary structure under the covered area. And the city is not asking, which is required of all new buildings in downtown, they are not asking me to put an awning on my awning. Typically, you have to have an awning that is lit and covers a certain amount of square feet in front of your entrance. So once again, this is the current building. This is the current building inside. Oops. This is the proposed inside of the current building. And this is the elevation for what is the proposed exterior. On the top, you are looking from the paved parking lot into the covered area and the storefront windows with the storefront door. And then on the bottom one, you are looking directly at the 3rd Avenue facade with the existing building on the left, and then the proposed roof structure of the lean-to shed on the left. Sorry, the existing building on the right, the proposed structure on the left. If I were to do a 612 roof pitch, it would be 6 feet above the current existing building. And so I think part of the code that states that you have to have between a 612 and a 1212 pitched roof doesn't ever take into account a shed roof. It takes into account, the 4 angled roofs and then, these structures. But once you get a shed roof, you have to go pretty high if you're going out 25 feet. So my recommendation would be for you to say, yes, this is an accessory structure, not requiring a variance from the Planning Commission, and the roof line would fall under the accessory structure requirements. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will get signs out tomorrow on anything I need to.
So do we want to go to staff report?
So
Can we stop this at any time
you can stop this.
if we agree with her?
But you have to listen to my argument.
Oh, yes,
first.
yes, of course.
Then you can.
All right.
The reason that I deemed this structure not an accessory structure is that it will be the only structure on the parcel in which it is located. The analogy I will use is if you have your house on a lot and you happen to own a vacant lot next door, the code would not allow you to build a detached garage on that vacant lot next door because it would not be an accessory building. Because by definition, an accessory building needs to be accessory to a main building. And if it is the only building on the lot, then it is the main building. So that's what's laid out in my staff report by providing you the definitions of accessory building, accessory use, main building, lot use, et cetera. That this proposed structure will be the only, that they're 2 separate tax parcels. The existing tax parcels in that part of town do not at all reflect the lots as platted back in the 1870s at all. So we really have just the tax parcels to go by, not the original lot lines. And because it will be the only building on the parcel, it can't be accessory to another building that's on a separate parcel. That's why I would suggest that you, that's my reasoning in why I said that a variance is needed or the building needs to meet the architectural and roof pitch standards in the code. I would agree that in this case, it would not make sense to meet those standards, that the codes were not written with a shed roof in mind. They were not written with the idea of a building on one lot being attached to another lot with a shed roof like this. I forget exactly what height we talked about when Julie came in as I was reviewing her minor modification application. But I think if we were to meet the 612 pitch on a building that is as deep as this is proposed, it would end up being 20 or 24 feet tall at the high end, substantially above the existing Napa building, and would look completely out of place. And this is a much better solution aesthetically, architecturally, et cetera. It just isn't envisioned by the code. I think that, going back to my report at your previous application for a variance, the question is, do we have a unique situation here? I think we do, in that it's a lot being used in combination with the building on the adjacent lot. It would not make sense to follow the code and have a 612 pitch. And again, with my apologies for the failure to get the signs ready to go out. Otherwise, I'd say this is an application that should be approved.
Okay. So questions from the commission? Anybody? Go ahead.
Okay, for the applicant, if this were to push to next month because of the sign, is it going to have an impact on your construction schedule to do what you're trying to do outside that building?
So the funny thing about going through the city of Stayton is pieces come out slowly of what you need to do. And so I've been working with the architect, since February on this building, along with just this structure. So yes, it would affect me just getting the architect and getting the building plans in for
So-
the rest of the
Yeah.
product.
Okay, so,
That's what it would be.
okay, I got you.
Right. She can't, at the risk of speaking for the applicant, she can't tell the architect, go ahead and finish the design
Right.
until she knows what the roof,
It's only money.
whether this application is approved or not.
Exactly. It has to go to engineering and everything else. So, I just can't afford to pay for that stuff twice.
Are we not back in the same situation we were before with the first application?
Well, only to the extent that if we were to carry this onward, if we believe that the variance of her project isn't necessary, then we can stop now.
So going back to the example that you used of two lots, you're putting a detached garage on the second lot. What if the detached garage was actually attached?
The code would not allow
there's no setbacks.
a building to cross a property line
Okay.
in that case. Where, in a residential zone, in this case, in this zone, there is a zero
Setback.
minimum side yard setback requirement, and there's actually a provision that says if buildings are within, and I forget, I think it's 4 feet of the property line, then they shall be at the property line, so we don't get a little 6-foot gap between buildings that can't be maintained and just accumulate trash.
So now I come back to, can a lot line adjustment be done?
Yes, I mean,
Which would-
that is an option for
Just
the
make it one
applicant.
lot.
It would just be.
Or make
it's
it
not
one
even a
lot. I'm
line-
just-
It's not even a lot line adjustment, it's a combination request with the assessor's office.
What's the timeline on that with the assessor's office?
I have no idea how long it takes them to respond to
Probably a
one.
million years, too long, I
Yeah.
would imagine.
I mean, it's been taking them 4 to 6 months to get new
Kind of
lots from a
almost a year,
partitioning
I
on the
would think.
tax maps.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to ask the question, could we approve with conditions? If the sign goes out, goes into position, we don't get any response back from anybody in the public, can we approve with conditions?
I would use a different terminology. I would say you could approve it with contingencies
Oh, okay.
as opposed to conditions. If you chose to tonight, you could continue the public hearing, but take a vote that says, with the information that you have available to you tonight, you are prepared to approve the application on the contingency that on June 25th or 7th or whatever date that last Monday is, there is no additional public testimony provided. And that might give the applicant a level of confidence to tell her architect to move forward, or may not, that's up to the app. I mean, that would be the only, but you can't really make a decision if you're leaving the record open because we failed to get a sign out, and somebody might come forward at the public hearing with some real testimony that indicates one way or the other that what your actions on the application should be.
I don't see that happening.
I don't see that happening either.
I mean, look how many people are here tonight.
Even with a high visibility location like this.
I think we'd have more proponents than anything else. Excited to have it there. Okay, what do we need to do?
So should we carry on? So do we have any proponents' testimony? Are there any opponents' testimony?
You ready?
So are there any governmental agencies? General testimony? Go ahead. Remember the name and address part.
Yes, my name is Aaron Frichtel. I reside at 12326 Gulf Lane, Southeast, Sublimity, 97385. I am president of Revitalize Downtown Stayton, and I wholeheartedly am excited about this development, and I think that it's needed for the area. It provides services and options for people that are currently, going to that part of town in the downtown core. And I think that this, the proposed variance, I guess it is, on the roof, I think is within character of the building next to it, even though it is not on the same lot as the building next to it. I think that it fits with character of the downtown core. I think it's a light and airy structure that will provide shelter for people that will eat at the food trucks that are there, and I think that it's a great addition to the downtown core. I think that you should approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the public? I guess he is the public, so. Any questions from the commission? Nobody? Okay. Does the applicant want a summary?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll be quick. So I would just like to summarize, because Dan said something that we don't often go back to our original plat. But we do, because that's what I bought, was this piece as part of an original plat. It was a single piece, the 10,000 square foot Napa building and the 5,000 square foot lot combined into one as a single piece for me to purchase. It included a 5-inch party wall of the Diedrich building to the north. And with this building with this structure attaching to the current building at the roof line, to me, that shares the party wall. But if you did go back to the original plat, the 5,000 square foot lot would be half of 2 lots that run north to south. And then the next 50 feet of the Napa building would be the other half of those 2 buildings, or those 2 plat maps running north to south. So the old plats didn't run from east to west. They ran from north to south. And there was, so I just wanted to summarize that again, that if you do go back to what I purchased, it was one parcel. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff?
I don't have anything to add. You've got a draft order in front of you, you've got motions, and I apologize that the sign didn't get put out. So I think that if you want to take a vote tonight, I would suggest that you continue the hearing. You either take a vote tonight and make a decision, or you continue the hearing. And if you want to, you could give an indication of how you would act on the application without additional testimony being provided at the continued hearing.
I don't think anybody else would say anything else. I mean, I don't see any other testimony. I mean, the guys at the Brew Place and the Stevenson guy from the Water Control District, I don't see those as,
They
there's
all.
nobody who lives at the
That's right.
Masonic Lodge, so.
Right. Well, they all, and the owners of all property within 300 feet
Right.
did receive notice. The sign
And we
gives
see how many
notice
of
to
those
the
there is.
public that may be going by who didn't receive a notice in the mail.
So I guess without being too obvious, I think we should just carry on. And, I mean, it doesn't seem fair to her to make her have to come back or wait or whatever.
Although it is nice to see you. You can come back anytime.
That's right. So,
And Michelle, too.
Yeah, Michelle too.
so with that, I'm going to close the hearing. Is there any deliberation? Anybody want to? So let's do a decision. Let's just vote on this, I guess. So, do you have a motion?
I have the motion. I believe it's the first one on this, yeah? Okay. I move the State and Planning Commission determine the covered seating area is not an accessory building, approve the application for a variance of Cardboard Box LLC, a land use file 90522, and adopt the draft order as presented by the staff.
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve this variance. Those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. The commission's decision may be appealed to the Stayton City Council within 14 days of the mailing of the notice of decision, in accordance with section 17.12.110 of the Stayton Municipal Code. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Does this mean the Spud bus will have a home?
Pardon?
Does this mean the Spud bus will have a home?
I hope so.
Okay.
He kind of likes to move, so he may be in the rotating
Yeah.
crowd still.
All right.
Are you going to recycle some paper for us?
I will recycle whatever paper you deliver.
Well, sure.
I think Richard had a question or a comment.
Yes, Richard.
As I understand it, we've approved both of these for the cardboard box, and there's no need for them to rush out now or this property.
Correct. Well, this second one, there is no council meeting. You are the final decision maker. For the other one, we will get a sign out 10 days before at least 10 days before the council meeting.
So I have to say that I put an offer on a house in Tigard, closing the end of June.
That's not permissible.
You can't move until you find it.
Sean can live there. Before we do wrap up, I want to say the length of this agenda which is very unusual to have 4 public hearings. It hasn't happened in my time here, is why I did not come back to have the discussion of future code amendments on live-work spaces. Because I really thought we'd be here much later than we are even, and that's late enough.
Yeah. And you can have these paper clips too if you want.
We'll work on my replacement. Michelle, are you up for replacement? I worked on it. I would.
Record.
Well, the